You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we hang out and talk about everything from hammocks and hammock camping to the group hangs from around the country. Hey everyone, welcome to the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we unwind, relax, and delve into all things hammock related. Join us as we swing into the world of hammocks, exploring tips and tricks for setting up that perfect hang, sharing stories of outdoor adventures, and discovering the latest trends in hammock camping and relaxation. Whether you're a seasoned hammocker or new to the art of hanging, this podcast is your cozy corner to kick back, escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and soak in the soothing atmosphere of the hammock culture. Prepare to be inspired, educated, and entertained as we embrace the hammock lifestyle together. So grab your favorite hammock, find that perfect spot to hang, and let's embark on a hammock-filled journey that will leave you feeling refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to take on the world. This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where every episode is a breath of fresh air. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Hammock Hangers Podcast. I am thrilled to finally have on our good friends from Team UGQ, Chad and Brittney, on the podcast with us this week. How's it going, guys?
It's going good.
I've been better.
Been better. You know, we can't all be rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah.
So UGQ has been one of the longest running OG supporters of HangCon. I remember you guys being there at my very first HangCon when I was just going there as an attendee, and you guys are still showing up and making great products. And I will say, for those of you that are listening, that if you don't already follow these guys on Instagram, you should definitely do that, because I would say out of the entire hammock community, between Trailheads and UGQ, you guys have some of the coolest looking Instagram worthy quilts that are coming out. I'm blown away by like some of the designs that you guys come out with and the quilts that you guys have. So props to you guys for creating beautiful work, not only functional, but beautiful quilts.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
So definitely head over to Instagram and follow these guys. They've got some good stuff going on, amongst other things. They've got their podcast, which we'll talk about that later. But let's go ahead and get started and talk about, so what is kind of you guys' journey into just camping in general? Is that something that you guys are fairly new to? Is it something that you've grown up with your whole life?
Well, I grew up camping in my youth. Not so much tent camping, zero hiking, zero any other outdoor recreational activities. It was pretty much load up the camper a couple times in the summer and go hang out with all of my parents' friends while all of us kids ran around the campground getting into trouble.
Yeah, I started out, my stepdad was in the military, so when we started camping, literally my first experience was an army tent with an army sleeping bag, and I was in there with my stepsister, and that was how I camped until we got a camper, that's
way better than mine.
Which was a very small camper. We were all stuffed into, and it was very hot, and it was really not that much better than the army tent, but
yeah, I remember scout camping with the summer camps. They had that thick canvas, again, not an ounce of breathability at all. And I can relate.
I think our camper was air conditioned. So
ours was not. And I slept above my parents' bed, so
I grew up pretty rough.
I would rather been out in the tent, to say the least.
Breeze a little bit.
Yeah.
I think all the campers that we had growing up, our very first camper was kind of the driving one. So when you're driving down the road, you were in the shelf above the cab, and you're just driving down the road, and probably not safe at all. But
that's how we made it down to HangCon.
I was going to say.
Our kids were actually in the back bedroom playing Mario Kart virtually the entire drive there. So
It was their first experience.
That was honestly, that's the only way to travel with kids. If you ask me.
Yeah, I completely agree. No
Shove
one
them in
died.
the back bedroom.
I mean, it might be safer than having the kids in the back seat, buckled up, because we did that this summer and last summer. But 18 hours for like 3 days in a row with your kids, it may be safer that they're in their own room.
I totally agree. Somebody's going to die in that scenario.
Someone's going to die. Someone is not going to make it on this trip.
Oh my gosh.
So what brought you guys into the hammock world?
We were kind of, let's see. So obviously Paul, my stepdad, started UGQ back in 2011. This was actually when him and my mom were just dating. And I started working for UGQ in 2013 or 2014. I can't really remember, somewhere around there, just as something to do, as a job. We had a very young family, and I was sick of being in factories. And so this was kind of like an opportunity to get out of the
factory life.
Yeah, the factory life. So I started there in 2014, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And right from the get-go, I fell in love with the company and the community, and we started going to hammock hangs pretty much right from the beginning. Me and Brittney did. We did not take our kids really ever.
Our oldest,
we took our oldest with us a handful of times, and he loved it. The other ones were still so young, and just the thought of trying to travel with them and it being a whole new thing and new for us too was too much. But so we've kind of been in it since the early years of UGQ.
Yeah, so UGQ is what introduced us for sure to.
Yeah, that's where I was getting. Yeah. That's why I keep her around. She helps summarize. She helps summarize everything I'm trying to say.
Point.
So before UGQ, had you ever heard of hammock camping before? Or I mean, 2011. That's kind of like the birthplace, really, of quilts and things like that.
Paul had never heard of it either. He actually went on a backpacking trip with a few buddies, and one of them had brought a backpacking hammock. I don't even know which one it was, because obviously back then there wasn't hardly anybody doing it. But that is what inspired Paul's intrigue, which was, this hammock, and they had tried setting it up a bunch of times and failed at it. And then when he got home, apparently he did a bunch of research and found out that there was actually a decent sized community of people who were wanting to hammock camp. And so the very first product that he ever made was an underquilt. And in fact, the first several products that he made was underquilts. And that was kind of like the origin of UGQ, was just making underquilts. And then eventually, we branched into top quilts and tarps and creating the whole system around hammock camping. Basically everything but the hammock itself. And then I don't know when Dream Hammock came on board, but once they started making hammocks, we pretty much teamed up with them right from the beginning. Because they were doing all handmade custom products, and it kind of just fit our business model. And so that was kind of like the original luxury hammock setup was, UGQ top quilt, underquilt, tarp, and then Dream hammock. And then when in the early days when you would go to hammock hangs, it was all everyone had was either Dream hammocks and UGQ products. Nowadays, not so much, now that there's, thousands and thousands of vendors popping up left and right. But
oh my God, you can see right now.
For those of you that can't see, I talk a lot with my hands. So Brittney.
Yeah, I distinctly remember in the early years, overhearing a conversation at HangCon. I don't know if this was with Randy and Deanna or with Paul and Missy, but somebody asked them, or when are you, like, they were talking, maybe it was Paul and Missy, when are you going to start making hammocks? And they said, we don't. Like, we already have the relationship with Dream. They make hammocks, and if people ask us about hammocks, we just, send them that way. I think, and we see a lot of that within the hammock community even still, but I remember that conversation really sticking out to me, going like, wow, that's really great to see what some people may see as competing businesses really working together to support each other. And
and it's a philosophy that we've carried through the years. I mean, there's a reason why we don't do backpacks and we don't do tents, and we get asked all the time, like, oh, are you guys going to do apparel? Are you going to make backpacks? And it's like, at the end of the day, those spaces have been around for a lot longer, and the the competition alone in those markets is unreal. One, and two, we make, in my opinion, the best quilts on the market, and there's already so many companies making amazing backpacks and tents and other things. To me, it's easier and makes more sense and more mutually beneficial to just team up with those. We sell quilts, you guys sell hammocks. Let's team up and help each other out.
Yeah.
Because Chinese manufacturing is on the rise, and us cottage brands got to stick together now more than ever.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like unspoken partnerships almost. Like it's kind of just.
Yeah. It's like there's like a code of ethics, if you will, that we know not to step over those boundaries.
Gotcha. So now Paul and Missy have stepped aside. You are the Mr. UGQ now. So talk about some of the changes that you've made since coming on to kind of be the ringleader of UGQ.
Well, the story is a little complicated. So I was actually pretty much running UGQ since about 2020. Paul was still involved in the business, but he was kind of more, just handling, the finances of the company, where I had kind of already stepped into that role. So I wouldn't say that a lot has changed operationally speaking, or kind of even really where the product's concerned. The biggest change that we've made as a company is pursuing content creation more than ever. If you look at some of the other companies that started around the same time frame as us, they're substantially bigger than we are. And I don't just mean in terms of social media, but in terms of overall volume, employee size, et cetera. And a big part of that is because they all started marketing right from the beginning, whereas for the first 7 years of our history, we did nothing but word of mouth sales. And so, that kind of really put us behind the ball in terms of being seen and noticed in the space. So it's like, we exist in this really tiny bubble of the outdoor community, backpacking, hammock alike. I believe that if we would have started marketing from the beginning, like you said, we have such amazing looking products, but not just looking, amazingly functional products that are exceptionally durable for the weight, et cetera. And if we would have capitalized on that early on, I think we would have been a lot farther down the road than we are. And so, it's kind of like one of those things where we're taking steps backwards in order to look at the big picture and go, where do we see ourselves 5, 10, 15 years from now? And for me, it's helping the community understand who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And everybody lives online. That's where the world exists now. And, UGQ was kind of behind the times in that arena. So we're focusing heavily on content. And then just like always, we're always looking at, sorry, I'm still trying to smack Brittney over here. Still trying to focus on innovation, not just redesigning our current products, but coming out with totally new products that, nobody else has seen before. Again, because the space is so competitive, now that there's 30, 40, 50 quilt manufacturers popping up on scene, just in the cottage community, let alone the big brands, they all kind of, from a newbie perspective, they all kind of blend together. They all, it's like they're quilts. They all have like this chamber design, and they all have these, draft collars. And, while we do offer features that other manufacturers don't, you have to be searching for those specifically in order to find those differences. And so we want to really focus on setting the standard and setting the pace and being as unique and different as we can be, but also being very intentional with what we're doing.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've noticed, especially when it comes to hammocks and quilts and tarps within the hammock community and within the cottage vendors, it seems to be a move closer to, let's dwindle down our wait time because we're going to add less customization to each individual quilts.
Yeah.
Where it's a lot easier, I'm sure, as a business standpoint, to have a lot of stock on hand that you can say, okay, this is what we're offering, and sending it out. But you guys still have a full range of customization on your website, and we're actually going to go through here in a little bit and talk about some of the options that you have. But do you see UGQ moving more to that model, or really sticking with the, I can still customize each individual component of a piece of gear?
I mean, we've always struggled with this in general for a lot of reasons. So obviously, mass production on highly customizable products is impossible, right? Because we can send a team to the cut table with 40 orders, and all 40 orders can be completely unique from each other. And so that creates, production bottlenecks and things like that. So over the years, because this is what we've always done, we've certainly created the most efficient process we can based on being a full custom shop. However, we've also offered a lineup of in-stock products that are, fixed and set in stone. Like, this is what they are. This is what you get. Mm-hmm. And we've tried a lot of different things over the years, like offering or having all of our stock sewn but not filled, so people can still choose their fill type. And mm-hmm. We've offered a lot of variations of our stock programs over the years. And one thing that's showed consistent is that our stock stuff sells almost instantly. When we put it on the website, it just sells so fast. And so that, creates other bottlenecks in the operation, because, you've got down that's allocated for custom orders, and then you get 30 stock orders that come in, and now you've got, there just creates a lot of logistical issues. But to answer your question, no, we're not going to ever get away from the custom side of things. As demand grows and as the company continues to grow, we'll maintain our small dedicated staff of our custom team, and then having additional staff specifically to focus on stock and readily available products. So that way we can maintain both. Which, like I said, we've done over the years. I mean, at one point we had over 30 employees, where we had one team that was dedicated exclusively to custom and one team that was dedicated to stock and fulfillment. So we've managed all those waters. So as we bounce back from COVID and just the industry as a whole, as things continue to come back, we'll navigate those waters. But no, we will not be outsourcing ever, and we will not be doing away with custom ever.
Gotcha. So since you brought up COVID and a lot of businesses trying to kind of recover from that still, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you are currently facing that are hindering you from getting to where you want to be?
Supply chain. And well, there's three things. So one, supply chain. Two, finding people that want to work.
Yeah, staff.
And three, getting the consumer back on board with buying small, made in America, small business, cottage. I've seen so many YouTubers come out with videos all about budget gear, right? That's like, because that's kind of like the mindset the general consumer's in right now, is buying budget. And they need to save money and they want to go out and experience the outdoors, but they don't want to justify spending $400, $500, $600 on a single product. So the influx to Amazon and the big box stores has exploded since the pandemic, because they have the resources to keep costs down, whereas small businesses don't. So it's definitely been a struggle. I mean, I've talked to a lot of other quilt manufacturers who are experiencing the exact same thing right now, where it's like, if they're not running sales, they're not getting orders. Mm-hmm. That's a very tricky place to be in as a business, because you've got, if you're running a sale, 15 times a year, you've changed the narrative, and you've created a new landscape for the general consumer to wait for the next sale, as opposed to jumping on and buying something, because it used to be we would run one sale a year, and it was our Black Friday sale. Mm-hmm. And back in 2020, Black Friday weekend, we did like 260,000 in sales, just Black Friday weekend. And we did $500,000 that month of November in 2020, which was absurd. I mean, it was unheard of for a company our size. But that was because there was the anticipation that built up throughout the year for that Black Friday sale. But everybody at the beginning of the year they weren't going to wait until Black Friday, and let alone be subject to the massive lead times that come along with that huge influx of orders. So, but as COVID drug on, more and more businesses were forced to run sales as often as they could, because they just weren't getting orders in any other way. And then that changed the narrative for our industry to where if you're not running the sale, people aren't buying. Yeah. And so I've been focused heavily on this year of trying to run as few sales as possible so that we can undo all that damage. Mm-hmm. But if I do it by myself and everybody else around me is running sales, it makes it next to impossible to survive.
Gotcha. Now, along those lines of talking about, the cost of gear and the expensive gear versus the budget gear, I've always said, I'm a DIYer, and for the most part, I can make pretty much all my gear. However, there's two things that I simply will not make, and I will happily pay someone else to do, and that is tarps and quilts. I don't care how much I will just pay someone else to do, especially with down and especially with like sill fabrics. I totally understand the means of why these quilts are so expensive. But can you just touch on, kind of let people know what is the cost of going into it? Because from just my experience, if you go out and you buy just the materials itself to buy the quilts and you make it yourself, in the grand scheme of things, you are really not saving that much money.
No. I mean, at the end of the day, we've adopted a business model that has very thin margins, and that's to be able to make it as affordable as possible for what you're getting. But just to give you an example, the cost of $950 fill power down for the down that we buy, which, I don't know if you've ever heard me say, but we buy the highest quality materials that we can find. We don't cut corners when it comes to materials at all. But just for 1 pound of $950, my wholesale cost as a master distributor, getting the best possible price, $130 a pound just for $950. Your average quilt has about a pound to 25 ounces roughly of down in it. So just for a $950 quilt, just the down cost, you're talking upwards of $150. Then you got your fabric costs and all the little bits and pieces, and then labor costs. So after talking with a lot of other quilt manufacturers, we have by far the highest labor costs in the industry. That's because we've chosen to keep a very small, highly skilled team. I don't want just a bunch of people that are making $15 an hour, because from experience, they don't care as much about the quality. Their heart's not in it, their mind's not in it. They're there to collect a paycheck. Whereas if you bring somebody in and you provide a career for them and a place that they can truly land and build a life around, they have their heart and soul into every single thing that they do. And so there's a reason why UGQ is known for our quality and our exceptional customer service and all these things, because we've decided to make significantly less money as a company for the greater good of the industry and the consumer and the overall experience.
Yeah, and I think as far as just the technical know-how and the sewing skill set that you have to create a specifically down quilt is significantly more than, I would say, sewing a hammock or sewing a tarp.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of complexities. For a standard quilt that's baffled, you're talking 3 layers that have to be joined together. So you've got the inner fabric, the baffle, and then the outer fabric. And just the skill involved alone in doing that is, I mean, for training new sewers, it's a minimum of 6 weeks just to get them somewhat up to speed on producing a quilt. The average person that goes out and DIYs a quilt, it takes them anywhere from 8 to 16 hours to complete a quilt their first time. Whereas for us, being that we've done it long enough, just a general, top quilt we can produce in about an hour and 20 minutes. Like 2 pieces of fabric on the table to a finished product going in a box with our small team. So,
I think it would take me in 2 hours just to cut the fabric and mark the fabric.
But that's, we've got 14, 13, how many years? 13 years of, perfecting our processes and our efficiencies and et cetera. So, and plus, we moved into a new shop last June, and that changes everything that you built in each shop that you move out of. Everything changes, right? The whole layout changes.
New processes.
Everything has to kind of be redone, and so that's a couple-year process in and of itself just to get things as efficient as they can be in the space that you're working. Because it's like in previous spaces, they were so small we couldn't make a bunch of templates for everything because we didn't have anywhere to store them. So then you get into a new shop that has a lot of extra floor space and wall space and storage. You can expand your inventory. You can get a whole new lineup of templates, and that can substantially increase your efficiency. But that all takes time. So that just like with any business, there's so much that goes into it that anybody that looks at a business like ours and goes, oh, I could do that. It's like, listen, just the production side of it alone is absurdly difficult. Managing this level of customization amongst hundreds and thousands of orders and customer emails and fulfillment and accessories and everything else. I mean, it's a massive undertaking. And, up until her and I took over, there was 3 owners, and now there's us, trying to manage everything. So,
that was a big change you made. You didn't say when he said, now that you're Mr. UGQ, bringing on Mrs. UGQ, because before I was really just like,
Brittney was never a part of the company.
I was never a part of the company, like business wise. It was, I would go with him to events, like pretty much anyone that I could. But our kids were little, so they would stay with my parents. And it was just Chad and I, but it was kind of like him. He was the face of everything.
So Brittney used to watch me come home extremely stressed. And that was just when I was running the production floor. Like when I was a co-owner, but I was in charge of running the operation, but I wasn't in charge of making sure that the company's finances were in order and like taxes everything. And, all of the other mumbo jumbo that nobody wants to think about where business is. Like we all want to do the fun side of it. Nobody wants to do the difficult, challenging side of it. So Brittney is now getting to experience why I was so stressed, on top of now we're both even more stressed because we have to deal with all the hard stuff too.
My gosh. And
there's not a free head. We're all stressed out.
Now he brought on me, the kids.
Yeah, now we have the kids here every day.
They're the UGQ kids, so they get to see what it's like.
We're trying to take on the world right now.
Yeah, we're like, let's not just do one thing. Let's make a bunch of major life changes all at once.
Why not?
Now, are your kids excited about the whole, like, are your kids excited to go to trade shows or excited to go to hangs?
Yeah, that is like HangCon when we came in January. That was like kind of our introduction, as like him and I kind of taking things on and then having the kids go to events. And that's why we did the RV, was to travel like that. And none of them have ever been in a hammock except the oldest, so they loved it and they want to go to as many events and shows and hangs as
all
possible.
The boys they all want to be like professional YouTubers, and our oldest is like really good at editing, so we've been having him involved in like editing some of the shorts.
Learning how to edit with him.
So they've played actually a big role. They help clean the shop all the time. They're constantly helping us take packages to the post office. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot to navigate, and a big part of that is the stress involved, because it's very easy for us dealing with all of the big picture to project onto the kids, especially during the workday when we're like trying to get stuff done and kids are coming in and out left and right. And we're like pulling our hair out, and why did we do this? What were we thinking?
School days going on, it's different, but now with summer break, it's brought on a whole nother. But they do like it, and it is mostly positive.
They still ask us every day, are we going to the shop today? Are we going to the shop?
If we don't come, they're
Saturday and Sunday, because we usually come in on the weekend. So Saturday and Sunday this past weekend, I was out doing yard work all weekend, and they get up, are we going to the shop today? Are we going to the shop today?
And they were so disappointed that we weren't. It really is like second home. But
this is our primary home, actually. We're here way more than we're at home.
But that's awesome that they've got buy-in to the business as well. So it's not like, mommy and daddy are doing the hammock thing again.
Right.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of how it was, and they would always see like me on YouTube going out with different YouTubers and going on all these fun trips.
Or when we would leave and they'd miss us, and
so now they're getting to be a part of that, and we're as we have YouTubers come to the shop, they're getting to meet them all and like experience that side of it, and then going to HangCon. HangCon was like life changing for them.
Yeah.
I mean, all those kids were running around playing together. They were all giving each other trail names, and
they had like little friends now. Oh, it was just so cute.
That was HangCon's by far my favorite event of the year. Right. From all the events that we go to. HangCon's the best. I mean, it puts trail days to shame. Well,
I told Chad I was nervous because the kids hadn't ever been with us to an event, except our oldest a little bit, but not really. I said I was nervous just because we've been to some and they were a little rowdier, and I was like, our kids aren't really in environments like that very often. I don't want to like shell shock them, but I want them to be part of it. So just as family friendly, we talk about it all the time, how family friendly that event was and how much peace we felt just with the kids running around. We weren't worried. We weren't like, I don't know. It just was great. I don't know if you can find many places.
I've done a lot of trips over the years and a lot of events. And this past HangCon probably is number one for me in terms of
seriously,
not just an event, but just a a trip
It
in
was
general
awesome.
because, we drove the RV down with the kids
Mhm.
and then we were gone for 8 or 9 days.
Yeah, because we stayed extra.
We stayed extra because of all the snow that was happening through Tennessee.
Right. Oh yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a great event, and the hospitality and the community and everything was amazing. Good. So you set the standard the bar pretty high. So I expect nothing.
Hopefully we can keep up with it.
Yeah, and one of our kids, Josiah, his birthday, because the dates are different, so we'll be celebrating a kid's birthday while we're there this year.
Ooh, okay. we'll have him go on stage and have the
whole
There you go.
Yeah, he's our shy. I hate that. Oh my gosh.
Hey, we'll have Shug there this year, so maybe Shug can sing happy birthday to him.
I think we should just have Heather do it because she doesn't even need a microphone to reach the entire campground.
Stop.
So we could just have her singing at the top of her lungs, and I'm pretty sure the neighboring campgrounds would also be singing.
I'm pretty sure Heather doesn't have a top of her lung. I just think that's her range. She doesn't have an inside voice or a quiet voice or even a regular sounding voice. She just has Heather volume.
That's why everybody loves Heather, and why she's perfect to work events like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, is there any going back to the shop? Is there any just where some other person come in would see like this is they would take this piece of gear for granted or a tool that for granted, but it's something that you cannot live without? What is the most indispensable tool in your shop that makes your life easier?
Our DIY downblowing machine. We built that. Me and Paul built that back in had to have been right around 2015. Mm-hmm. Somewhere around there. And it's basically been the same one that we've had since then. We were using a multiple bucket system, basically a 5-gallon bucket that we had built a vacuum lid for, and this vacuum lid essentially is what you would take off and screw on to each of the individual buckets. So back in the day, me and my brother, before the Bandit came out, the top quilt was called the Flight Jacket, and it was all horizontal chamber design. So on any given one, there was like 21 chambers, and so we would go through and fill 21 buckets with the appropriate amount of down in each bucket, and we literally had 21 5-gallon buckets stacked up. And what we would do is we would grab a bucket, take this vacuum lid off, put it on this bucket, hook the hose up to it, put the other end of the hose into the quilt, flick a toggle switch, it would blow, you turn the toggle switch off, unscrew the lid, take the hose off, unscrew the lid, slide that bucket to the side, grab the next bucket, take that lid off, put this lid on. Woo. Needless to say, it was not not the most efficient system. So it went from taking about 20 minutes to fill a quilt with that system to when we first developed it, it was probably about 10 minutes, so it cut it in half. Now we can fill a quilt in 2 to 4 minutes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's fast.
Using the same DIY machine that we spent, maybe a couple $100 on 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's literally filled tens of thousands of quilts and scullies and quillos and whatever.
Zeppelins.
So I could rebuild 100 of them because it was literally done with some PVC piping and a vacuum and a bucket. But just the way that it was designed made it a very, very efficient system. And, there's companies like Hammock Gear who are still doing it by hand because they've got a guy there who's indisposable. His name's Rick, who, according to Adam, he can fill like 40 quilts a day by himself, which is absurd. By hand. Apparently this guy Rick developed like this system or this jig that has all these like tubes that he fills all it down with, and I don't know. Adam was explaining it to me. It didn't make any sense, but whatever. I'm like, listen, that's crazy. And then you got EE. They've got their big giant down blowing machine. They can probably fill. But the thing is that a $60,000 down blowing machine, you can fill a quilt in about 90 seconds.
Wow.
So we spent a couple $100 and could get it down to basically 30 seconds more than that.
Yeah, for a lot less.
Right.
You know what I mean? Does it really make sense to spend $60,000 for an extra 30 seconds faster? No.
Yeah, probably not.
I get it.
Well, one of the things that I talked about that I really wanted to do was to kind of go look at your website, which is really great now. It works and it's really easy to order. It's kind of an inside joke for us, but I want to go through and I'm going to look specifically at the Bandit, your top quilt, and we're going to go through each one of the options here and talk about why I would choose one option for the other. And all of these questions related to the top quilt are also going to be relevant to if you're looking for an underquilt as well. So even though we're going to be looking at options for a top quilt, if you are looking to buy an underquilt, these will also be relevant to that discussion as well. Okay, so I'm on the Bandit order page right now, and I'm looking. The very first option that I get to is fill power. Can you kind of just explain to everybody what is, you have an 850 and a 950. What's the difference?
All right, Brittney, take it away.
No, I knew you were going to do that. Don't you?
Let's see how much you've learned in your time here.
No.
Under the bus.
So essentially the difference in fill power is weight more than anything, overall volume. So people ask me all the time, like, what's the difference between 850 and 950? In the field, performance-wise, there isn't a difference. And the reason why is because an 850, a 20-degree quilt with 850 versus a 20-degree quilt with 950, they're both going to perform at that 20-degree comfort rating, right? The primary difference is that it takes less 950 to achieve that same temp rating than it would with 850. And the main reason why is because the actual strands on the down itself are much longer the higher you go in fill power. And this allows you to trap air at a greater distance, thus requiring less volume overall to trap the same amount of air that you would need to with 850. So 950 essentially allows you to have a lighter product. Performance is identical, but it just gives you a lighter version of that 20-degree product.
That's exactly
so
right.
for most people, the 850 should be perfectly fine. And if you're the Graham weenie that is looking for the lightest possible option, you need to go with the 950.
Or if you're just that guy that wants to have the best of the best,
like
and you
the
don't care what
high
it
end.
costs.
Yeah,
because we get a lot of those.
Yeah, some people just
but yeah, overwhelming majority.
850.
You know, especially when you're looking at like a 40-degree quilt, a 40-degree, the difference in weight between an 850 and 950 is it may be an ounce and a half.
Right.
You'll see a bigger difference when you get in on the 0-degree range. A standard 0-degree, there might be a 5 or 6 ounce difference, which again, to the average weekend camper, that's like absurd to spend an extra $100+ for 5 ounces. But clearly, there's plenty of people doing it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an option.
Gotcha. All right. So now for temperature rating. Now, I have my personal opinions when it comes to this as far as a top quilt. I usually say when I'm suggesting top quilt temperature ranges is to say your 40-degree can take you down to 40-degree and lower. But if you have a 0-degree and you're down to 40, you're going to get hot, like really hot. Now, as far as an underquilt goes, I can take a 0-degree quilt and use it all the way to 50 degrees, and I'm perfectly fine. What is your opinion as far as that goes?
So I think one of the big reasons why quilts came onto the market in the first place was because of their versatility and their ability to regulate temperature. So quilts in general, their primary function is exactly that, to be able to regulate your temperature so that you can take a single product out in a variety of temperatures. So when you look at a top quilt doesn't have a back. Right. And in most cases, most companies offer a zippered version. So you can quite literally open this thing all the way up and use it as a blanket. So for me, I can take a 0-degree quilt out in 40-degree temps and be totally fine with it because I can just have it opened up and draped over me and have an arm out, a leg out, and my temperature is being regulated very easily in that sense, which you can't do with a mummy bag. And then same with underquilt. Underquilts, most of them are equipped with multiple levels of suspension, so you can drop it down, vent your back, and then cinch it back up, as you need to trap in more heat. So the whole idea behind quilts is specifically to regulate your temperature so that they're more versatile instead of having to get a 40-degree sleeping bag and then a 30-degree sleeping bag, etc. Most people will opt for a 20-degree set because that's going to cover the majority of the range that the average person camps in. And then again, you can take your 20-degree set out on I went and did North Manitou Island in July with a 30-degree set. in a hammock and just dropped my underquilt down. So it essentially wasn't even touching the hammock. And then had my top quilt all the way opened up and just kind of draped over me and was perfect. So I think that's kind of the goal for most people, is they're looking for a single product that they can use in the broadest range possible. And that's kind of the whole idea behind quilts in general.
Yeah, I usually tell people, if you're going to buy one set, 20 degree it covers most people for what? Because even a 20 degree, if you have a quality quilt like you would get from UGQ, like a 20 degree underquilt, it may take you a lot further down than just 20 degrees. That also depends on personal preferences and sleeping. But, I've used 20 degrees down to 11 degrees before, and been, well, that particular trip, there was a lot of wind. So I was not cold. I was not warm, but I was definitely not cold.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, most people understand that. I guess that's another big issue in the industry too, and I know in the cottage community, there's not as many doing it now because that's kind of changed over the years, but the survival to comfort rating, and it being a big question mark for a lot of people, like, well, are your quilts comfort rated or survival rated? Because so-and-so's a survival rated, and I bought a 20 degrees from them, and I was cold at 40 degrees. Right. And, it's just this huge mess. I've never understood it. Like, if it says 20 degrees, then that should be where you can take it to. Why have this huge misleading thing? Yeah. And so we've always comfort rated. There was never a time in our history where we didn't comfort rate. That was kind of, Paul's mindset was, these should just be rated for what they state they're rated. And in the early years, we would always get put on these, best backpacking quilts of whatever year. And on there would always show like ours being heavier than everyone else's. But that was because we were doing a comfort rating and everyone else was doing a survival rating. And so our 20 degree was not equivalent to their 20 degree. It was more equivalent to like their 0 degree, because their 0 degree was comfort rated for 20 degree. Right. And so then when you put those two side by side, our 20 degree with their 0 degree, then the price matches up, the weight matches up, and the performance matches up. And so the more that companies adopted it, we've all kind of now synced up, and you can see the similarities across the board in terms of weight and cost.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems to be that a lot of your quality cottage vendor gear that you would really be proud to own is really based on comfort rating, where in my experience, I would say your budget gear, the really cheap stuff, is still kind of looking at it's survival rated versus the comfort rated.
Oh yeah, I don't think that there's any non-cottage vendors that are doing a comfort rating. Gotcha. At least not that I've seen. I think that almost all of them do that same survival rating. In fact, Stephanie, who you had on last, you heard her whole story, and one of the things that she talked about was buying, the Amazon, deal of the day. Come to find out that 40 degree rating, I mean, that thing was flat as a pancake. I'm like, I don't know if you could camp in 80 degree weather with this. You'd have been better off bringing a sheet from home off your bed. But that's that type of misleading marketing that is very frustrating for us, because we focus so heavily on making the best quality product possible that, our products are not easy to buy, right? They're an investment into your outdoor experience, not just this year, but for many, many, many years to come. Yeah. And in today's society, everyone wants instant gratification. They want something they can get right now.
Real cheap.
And, it's like, how many of us have bought a pair of shoes that was $20 on Amazon versus that pair of $200 shoes? For instance, I bought a pair of $20 shoes a couple months ago off Amazon because I like the way they look, and the whole sole peeled right off of it like last week. And I've got shoes that I spent $100 on, 12 years ago that still look new. And so that's kind of the same mindset when you look at our products, that they're built to last. It's a made in America, built to last product that you are investing in, but it's the last top quilt you'll ever need to buy. It's the last underquilt you'll ever need to buy. Our products are lifetime warranty. So if something fails on it down the road that was a manufacturer issue, guess what? It's covered. Yeah. Now there's no big companies doing that. Only the cottage companies offer those types of warranties because we believe in our products. We know that they're going to last. Okay.
And your temperature ranges range from 0 degree Fahrenheit to 40 degree. what's the craziest custom order as far as like temperatures that you've had to do?
So the coldest we've done was a -40, which required a 6.5-inch baffle.
Whew, that's a lot of ducks.
Yeah,
a lot of geese.
A lot of
geese.
Sorry to
Yeah,
the viewers.
that was probably, I'm gonna guess, around 40 to 50 ounces of down.
Wow. Woo.
Man,
We don't get a lot.
I can only imagine what a 6-inch baffled quilt. Whew, good Lord.
It's a beast. But we don't get a lot of requests for that because most people are still way too scared to go out in sub-freezing temps in a quilt.
Mhm.
Now, in a hammock setup, in my opinion, it's the most thermally efficient setup that you can use in the winter. So if I had a -40 underquilt and top quilt, I could go out in any condition pretty much regardless and be totally fine.
Mhm.
But if I was using just a top quilt on a pad,
Right. You got that underneath.
one little draft and you're feeling every bit of that. So I understand the mindset.
Yeah.
You know, most people that are going out in -40-degree weather, they're probably not that concerned about weight. So they're probably just going to opt for the biggest sleeping bag they can get that cocoons them, you know, the most efficient way possible, where quilts kind of just don't necessarily meet that need.
Gotcha. All right, so we got the fill power, temperature rating. Now width, you have slim, regular, wide, and extra wide. Why would I order one versus the other?
Well, if you're slim, you'll want a slim. If you're regular,
Yeah.
I mean,
no. So
Regular.
it's kind of the same principle of why we do such a high level of customization. You know, over the years we've had so many people come to us like, you know, hey, I'm 6'9", 390 pounds. I can't find any product that works for me. Can you guys help? And so we've always been able to meet that need in the market of being able to custom fit our products to any single person, any size. It doesn't matter how tall or how wide you are. So these 4 sizes, both for width and length, are what we see as the most commonly needed across the board.
Mhm.
And then, you know, being that we are a custom shop, we do allow for people to request additional widths. Like we've done, our X wide bandit is 65-inch. We've done upwards of a 95-inch wide bandit. And that was, in all fairness, that was before we came out with the Tango, which is the 2-person quilt. And that was somebody using it as a 2-person quilt.
Mhm.
But the products were designed, specifically the Bandit was designed to be infinitely scalable in any direction.
Mhm.
And so when we built it in the CAD programs, the way that it was designed was that we can add 5 inches of width at a time and 6 inches of length at a time infinitely. And the drawing basically accommodates for that. So, you know, the widths are based on a variety of factors: sleeping style, actual body type and build.
Mhm.
You know, whether somebody wants an additional width to be able to tuck it all the way around them and actually clip it close behind them. Same with length, to be able to pull it over your head, or for people that are stomach sleeping, et cetera. So the widths are based on a variety of factors. And again, most people just looking at the sizing chart can go, okay, this is what would fit me. Now, if I want an additional width to be able to tuck, I can size up one full width. You know what I mean? So it kind of helps the customer really understand like what they need. So all of our sizing recommendation is based on what would exactly fit you.
Mhm.
And then we say, you know, hey, if you plan on stomach sleeping, go up one full length. If you're somebody that tosses and turns a bunch in the middle of the night and you're sleeping on the ground, you might want to size up. Whereas in a hammock, you can get away with a narrower width because you've got your underquilt covering, you know, up past your shoulders. So, again, a variety of reasons, but it's to accommodate the mass majority of people out there looking for something that they can't find anywhere else.
Okay, awesome. And I guess that would kind of be the same thing with the length. You've got short, regular, long, and extra long. So if I was ordering an extra long, what would be the tallest that the extra long would accommodate?
So the extra long fits up to 6'9". And so the way that quilts are designed is to fit comfortably up to the chin because there's no hood or anything. So the X long fits comfortably up to the chin on somebody who, generally speaking, is 6'9". So then anything beyond that, obviously they'd be looking at custom sizing, which we have certainly done.
Gotcha. All right. So now we're back to another down question. The next option is your overstuff. And you've got just your regular overstuff. I would assume that's the main body of the quilt. And you've got the foot box overstuff, which I always get because my feet always get cold. But talk about what's the advantage of overstuffed, and why would I choose to purchase that option or not?
Brittney, come on, you gotta do some talking here. I'll help you. I'll assist you as you answer this question. So, don't use the headache excuse.
It's not an excuse. Oh my God.
Just do your best. Do your best, and I will assist you.
I'm still in training, technically. So
you were not taking notes on anything I'm saying.
I know. I should be doing that notepad over there.
All right, I'll take this one. I'll let you get one of these.
I'll get one.
Think about one of these that you want to answer. So overstuff. This is probably what we get the most commonly asked question. Like, why would I need overstuff? Especially because we already do a comfort rating, and so overstuff for a company that is doing a survival rating, it'll allow this quilt to come up to a comfort rating. Mm-hmm. So the internal construction of a quilt itself only has so much room. Right. So if I'm making a 20-degree quilt, it's got a 2.5-inch baffle inside, and the chamber's 5 inches wide. So this is going to give me X amount of volume inside this chamber. And so all of our fill formulas are based on filling that space appropriately to allow for a comfort rating. Overstuff in our case doesn't actually increase temp rating at all, maybe a couple degrees, but it does. What it does do is it allows you to one, it minimizes downshifting just because there's extra volume in there and there's less space for the down to actually move around. Number two, it'll help the quilt loft up significantly quicker. So if you're somebody that's out on the trail day in and day out using this thing repeatedly, especially if you're hiking big miles and you get to camp, like you don't want to wait half hour to an hour for your quilt to loft up to its appropriate size to actually be comfortable. You want it to loft up as quick as it can. So those are kind of like the two main things. And three, it'll also help buffer against loss of loft due to condensation, due to oil saturation on the fabric and down itself. So down being that it's so lightweight, if I am using my quilt, 100 nights a year and the fabric itself absorbs a lot of my body oil, well, that actually adds weight to the fabric itself, which then can start actually compressing the down because it's literally weight on top of the down. And so having that extra volume helps maintain that actual comfort rating. So when there is some loss of loft, you're still maintaining that comfort rating because you have that extra volume inside that chamber. And so for a lot of people, that's really important, especially that are in high humid climates where they're experiencing just a lot of wetness in the environment, a lot of condensation. Having that overstuff to combat the loss of loft makes a big difference for people. So it's an option that we put on there because, again, not everybody is that concerned about weight. In fact, in our experience, most people are concerned about their experience out in reality because we've talked to so many customers that use, products from other companies and they were freezing to death. And for them, it wasn't worth the weight savings that they got. And so they come to us and I want as much overstuff as you can pile in this thing to make sure that they stay warm at that temp rating. And so that's kind of why that option exists, is for the people that want it and see a need for it. But again, it's not for everybody.
Okay. All right. And we've got the inner shell cover, which is going to be the layer that is on your body itself. Yep. Okay. And the outer shell. Now, what it says MRS 20 colors. What does the MRS stand for?
There's a whole specs thing down here on the bottom of the page.
Yeah. I have found that if you put it on the website, no one reads it.
No one will read it. That is a fact. So MRS 20 stands for micro ripstop 20 denier. So it's a 1.1 ounce ripstop nylon fabric. That's a 20 denier weave on it. So if you've seen on our Instagram, I did a durability test on fabric and it was on the MRS 20 specifically, where I scratched a stick violently against it and a spork and a zipper and violently against it, and it didn't even remotely tear it. So for us, that's kind of been our go-to fabric across the board. While people look at it as a 20 denier and go, wow, that's kind of heavy, the reality is that the 20 denier fabric is what set the standard for sleeping bag and quilts for a long, long time. And the main reason why is because that fabric for the weight is the most durable fabric you can get for the weight of 1.1 ounce. Like, it's just absurdly durable. And so as a company, we're not just in the ultralight through hiking community, right? We're in the big game hunting community, the bushcrafting community, et cetera. And these guys are hard on gear. And so are through hikers. I mean, don't get me wrong, through hikers are very hard on gear. I mean, they're pulling a quilt in and out of a stuff sack, thousands of times. And if you think that that's not going to impact the fabric, then you're sadly mistaken. And in fact, people that are, opting for 7D fabrics right now are experiencing a lot of issues with it because of how fragile it is. So that's kind of why the MRS 20 is our main fabric that we typically recommend to people if they're not like super duper concerned about weight. My philosophy as of late has been it's light enough. Like, this is light enough. Like, you got to be careful where you're shaving all this weight out of, because your experience when you go out there is the number one thing. And too many people have had issues using these super ultralight fabrics. And if you get a tear in the middle of the night and one of your chambers empties out all the down, guess what? Your trip's pretty much over. Yeah. And so that's a big deal to people. And not to mention that's not going to fall underneath a warranty. That if the fabric, because it's such a lightweight fabric, like, that's just the nature of the fabric itself. Now, if there was a defect in the weave, that's one thing, but I've read reviews of other companies who their products ripped and they're like, sorry, you're out of luck, and so I talk a lot about these things, so stop me whenever you need me to do that.
Now, is the MRS 20 denier, is that the same fabric that you use for your printed fabric as well?
Yep. Okay. So all the printed fabric is on MRS 20. Now we can do, so all of our fabric, printed and solid, all comes from Ripstop by the roll. We've had a great partnership with them from the very beginning, and they provide the best product, the best fabrics that, in my opinion, on the market, hands down. They do have the option to print on a variety of downproof fabrics. The MRS 20 is what we do as our default printed fabric, but you can get a lighter denier. You can get a 15D actual membrane fabric, so it's a non-ripstop that we can print on. And I do all that stuff upon special request.
Yeah,
so
custom.
But it's just one of those things where I help customers know, like, hey, when you go with these lighter products, you're going to be potentially dealing with higher risk. So, and then of course we offer the M10, which is the same as the inner shell. We offer that as the outer shell also, and that's, again, I primarily recommend for people who are already experienced using ultralight fabrics and know how delicate they are and how to take care of them. And the advantage of that is obviously packability, weight savings, etc.
Gotcha.
But that's also a non-ripstop fabric. So again, something to be more cautious with.
All right, Brittney, I'm going to throw this one at you. So one of the kind of bigger changes that I've seen in especially quilts in the last few years is this option of a draft collar. What is a draft collar?
I like how Chad is like over here just in this glory. How much I hate this right now. Well, what you have to understand is when I started even working at UGQ, or however you want to term it, it was to basically be Chad's like assistant, take over emails, and now I've got thrown into just everything you can imagine. So I honestly do not have a lot of this knowledge, even answering emails.
Draft collars, come on.
I mean, that there's a draft collar at the neck and at the foot, I think.
But what is it? What is why is it there? What is it? And
well, it's there to eliminate drafts from the wind, of course.
She's not wrong.
Yeah, but you're not wrong. Absolutely.
No, I'm not wrong. But as far as the technical side of things, I'm gonna have to hand it over to Chad.
So, Chad, why do I want a draft collar? Now, the last few quilts that I've gotten, I've made sure that I do have draft collars on them. But for someone that has never ordered a new quilt, like, what is it and why do I need it?
So ours is a little bit different than some of the other manufacturers in that it's actually a separate downfill tube that is sewn into the neck of the quilt, as opposed to some kind of have it like integrated. And at that point, I don't really see it as a draft collar, just a different directional tube that's sewn into, regardless. So ours is an actual downfill tube that's sewn into the neck of the quilt. And there's a couple reasons for it. A, to increase thermal efficiency. So when you have a draw cord around the top of a quilt or a sleeping bag and you cinch that up to your neck, in order to truly block out all of the air, I mean, you got to cinch it up really, really tight to your neck, which then can become very uncomfortable because you've got this whole scrunched up chamber that's scrunched up against your neck, etc. So the draft collar allows for you to create a really, really thermally efficient seal, but make it exceptionally comfortable around the neck. And so you don't have to cinch the quilt up so tight to your neck like you're wearing a suit and tie. But you're able to create a comfortable seal around your neck. And that's really the primary function of the draft collar is thermal efficiency, because quilts, already are up against it not having an entire back. So making them thermally efficient in any way that we can is of the utmost importance. And then we also offer a foot box draft collar, and this is pretty much only available on the zippered foot box, and that's just because there's, no matter what you do, just because of physics, when you cinch that whole foot box up, there's going to be a small hole left in the bottom of the foot box, and so the draft collar is basically there to block that hole and, again, increase thermal efficiency. But in our years of doing the draft collar, I would say 9 out of 10 quilts that we produce have draft collars on them. No.
Yeah, I would say, for those of you who are listening, if you're going to get a top quilt with a cinched foot box or like your zipper, you want the draft collar.
For
you
sure.
100% want the draft collar.
Yep.
All right. So what about the draft collars on an underquilt? Or kind of the same thing? Kind of. Obviously you're not cinching that around your neck, but
no. But the draft collars on the underquilts are not optional. That's just part of it.
Okay.
That's because I don't want anybody having an underquilt without draft collars, because I don't see the point. The whole purpose of so when you look at like the gathered end of a hammock, it's extremely wrinkled, right? You got all this fabric coming together and it creates these huge voids and wrinkles. And so the draft collar is designed to fit to the hammock and fill all the gaps of those wrinkles, again, to increase thermal efficiency. And that's non-optional on our products. I mean, if somebody emailed us and was like, hey, we really want this underquilt with no draft collars. Now our 50 degree, we just launched a 50 degree Zeppelin underquilt this year. That's just an in-stock one. That doesn't have a draft collar on it, but that's, again, because it's designed to be used in summer, where in the way that it fits on the hammock, it does a good enough job. And I've had several people using them already who are like, this particular one doesn't need a draft collar when you're in, 70-degree weather, 60-degree weather. But yeah, those are non-optional on the standard.
Okay. All right. So now we get to the foot box style. So you offer 3 different styles: the zipper and draw cord, which we talked about, a box flat, and a fully insulated. Kind of talk about the difference in those and why I might want to go one option versus the other.
So a lot of people get confused on this, because what a lot of the other manufacturers do is they actually create an entirely different product based around the foot box. And so, like, you look at some companies and they're top, they've got 3 different top quilts: one that's fully sewn, one that's zippered, and one that's insulated. When the reality is it's all the same product. And so we've decided to keep things simple in that sense and offer all of those options on one single product, as opposed to dividing it up amongst a variety of products. So the advantage of the zippered foot box, obviously, is the highest amount of versatility. So you can fully open it up and use it as a blanket. It's a lot easier to regulate your temperature. You can kind of open up the bottom of it if you want to open up the hole if your feet start to get a little hot, etc. The boxed flat sewn is the lightest of the 3 options. And so it's essentially the same as the zippered foot box, but the bottom is then the corners are taken in and it's kind of folded like the bottom of a brown paper bag, if you will, like a lunch bag. And so it's folded in to create that square boxed shape. And so there's no additional hardware, there's no additional baffling or insulation. It's essentially the rectangle that's folded up and sewn this way to create that box for your feet to go. But that's the most popular amongst like through hikers, again, because it's the lightest of the 3 options. And then the fully insulated is a fully baffled construction. I guess that's fine.
It's so hot.
The fully insulated is the most thermally efficient of the three options. It's a fully baffled construction. So there's no cold seams in it whatsoever. So the inner and outer are actually cut differentially. So the outer is cut longer than the inner. And that's to allow for an internal construction that makes it to where there's zero cold spots in this footbox at all. Where some people that have an insulated footbox, it's actually just a plug. But when you put a plug in, everything that you're sewing around that radius is what's considered a sewn through construction. So that would be a cold seam all the way around that plug, where ours, that whole structure on the bottom is fully baffled. So it's insulated. When you feel the outside to the inside, you can't feel any seams. It's the fluffy goodness all the way around. That's what Brittney gets on all her footboxes.
I was just gonna say that's what I get every time, baby.
Yeah, I agree. If I'm getting anything below a 40 degree, it's fully insulated.
Mm-hmm.
Fully insulated.
Regardless.
Yeah, I kind of make quilts every time I go out on a different trip for that trip, but that's because I can do that.
That's
I know a guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So the next option is the dynamic tension control. Now that sounds like a fancy term. Help us out with that one.
So there's been a lot of misconception about this. So we were told years ago that there was another company already doing an edge tensioning system like this, and a lot of people thought that we had like copied it and this and that, and so just to set the record straight, this was one of the things that I actually came up with organically through talking with a variety of people and trying to minimize drafts. And we've always been in the quilt world trying to figure out a way to cut down on drafts, because that's always kind of like the biggest hurdle for people to overcome, is how to make it draftless. And so the edge tensioning system, we had developed it, launched it, and then somebody told us that somebody else was doing it, but it wasn't, patented or licensed or anything like that. So we pushed forward with it. Now ours is very unique in both how it's integrated into the quilt and how it functions. But essentially it's a piece of flat elastic that runs through the entire edge of the quilt that has the adjustments. So like if you're picturing the top quilt on top of you, the back is open. If you were to sit up, the two adjustments are right below your thighs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here, you look at me. So they come out like right here.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows you to be able to actually reach down and pull those adjustments and cinch up the whole back nice and tight to your body. And so that helps it hug your body better, but it also helps hug the pad better when used in conjunction with our pad attachment system. And so if you look at like the pad attachment system on a given quilt, each attachment point could be 12 to 16 inches apart. And so when you put those on your pad, well, if the straps kind of slide close to each other, now you've got like this huge flap of fabric that's wanting to open and close as you roll because of the gap between the attachment points. So what the edge tensioning system does is it actually tensions up that whole piece of fabric. So even if your straps do kind of accordion up and get closer to each other, it's absorbing all that extra fabric so that you're still not allowing any flaps or cold air to come rushing in. And that's been probably one of the biggest differentiators of our products compared to the competitors, is allowing it to cut down on drafts substantially more than the average top quilt.
Okay. So would the dynamic tension control be geared probably more toward people that are tent camping versus hammock camping, or?
It's one of those things that it literally weighs like 10 grams to add it onto your quilt, and it can either be fully engaged or not at all. And so most people opt for it because I think it's one of those things I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Yeah. And for the price and weight, almost everyone opts for it. I would say, though, that the people that don't are exclusively in a hammock. Gotcha. So yeah, I would say yes, overwhelmingly the majority that are ground camping use this system, because I now that I've used it for so many years, I couldn't imagine using a quilt without it or without a draft collar.
Gotcha. And finally, we get to the taper style. So talk a little bit about why someone would go with a full taper or no taper at all.
The biggest reason is just extra room. So one of the main reasons why people switch from mummy bags to quilts is because they feel too constricted.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough room in the leg, from the hips down, basically, right? So the mummy bags are designed for you to have like your shoulder room and some elbow room, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
But once it gets from your waist down, they're designed to really like hug you tightly because they want you to move the mummy bag like with your legs, right? So if you go to like bend your legs up, the whole sleeping bag comes with you. In a quilt, because of the back being open, it allows for you to actually make it wider in that mid range. Mm-hmm. And then when you go with a no taper, it actually takes that width and extends it all the way through the foot box. So you can still close that foot box, but you have a much wider foot box. So like for me, when I sleep on the ground, I put my leg up in like a figure 4 position. Mm-hmm. You can't do that in a mummy bag, because your legs have to move literally in unison, or you can't move them at all. And so having that extra width through the hips down gives you the ability to move your legs around a lot more. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the main reason why people switch to quilts, is because they feel too constricted. And frankly, I'm amazed that there's so few manufacturers offering it. And the reality is it's production reasons. Mm-hmm. But we've obviously mastered our processes when it comes to how we cut, and I don't know who else is doing tapered options on their quilts as a custom option. I know the two main competitors of ours are not.
Well, people love it.
So, and that's a huge reason why if people aren't buying from them, why they come to us, because of the dynamic tension control and the no taper option.
Yeah. Okay. Now, before we get onto some of the other great products you have, I got a couple other questions as far as quilt specific. As far as like compression time, I know a lot of people kind of worry about, if I go on a trip and I don't unpack my gear for another 2 days after my trip, my underquilt or top quilt is still the compression side. Am I going to ruin my underquilt by leaving in there a few extra days? What is kind of the thought process on storing a quilt uncompressed, and if you leave it in there for a few days after your trip, is it really going to destroy your quilt?
So it's definitely a loaded question. Generally speaking, keep your quilt in a non-compressed state as often as you can. Keep it lofted and aired out as often as you can. So one of the things that most people experience when out camping is condensation. Now, condensation, when dealing with an animal product, can create a very foul odor. And so keeping it, if you go out for 2-3 days and you experience heavy condensation and your quilt's compressed in that state for several days, you're leaving opportunity for mold growth and for mildew and smell and all these other things. So is it going to damage the down doing that a handful of times? No. Is it going to, if you do it enough times over its lifespan? Certainly, you're going to reduce the lifespan. It's like asking, if I eat healthier foods versus junk food, which one am I going to have a longer lifespan with? The answer is pretty obvious. So yes, the more that you allow it to be aired out and in its fully lofted natural state, the longer lifespan you're going to have. Would I say it's something that you should be panicking and freaking out about if you get home and you're just tired and the next couple of days you get busy and you forget about it? No, I've had quilts that I had in a stuff sack for a year and pulled them out and they still lofted back up.
That's bad advice.
Would I recommend it? No, but I did it because it's different with me because part of it.
You know a guy.
Part of it.
A lot of reasons.
Part of it is that it's R&D, right? I have to learn through my own processes how well this product can perform. What happens if I do leave it compressed for a year? So did I do it on purpose because I was thinking that way? No.
You had a good pun there, and you didn't even realize it. You said working with animal products that can have a foul odor, and it's like waterfowl. I was my God. Catch it.
Well, that's what you're here for.
I'm distracted.
Well, speaking of foul odors, how worried should I be about washing a quilt? I remember just last year was the very first time that I've ever washed any of my down quilts, because we're always kind of in this mindset of like, I don't want to get any water or anything on my quilts. It's just going to destroy it. But how easy really is it to wash a quilt? And really, how often should we be washing our down gear?
So easy is subjective. It's easy in the sense that you're literally what we recommend for people is to hand wash like in a bathtub with warm water using an actual down wash. But the reality is that the average person who's camping, 25 nights a year or less, probably never would I even recommend washing it. It's just really not necessary, especially if it's having ample time in between uses to air out. The down itself doesn't really absorb a lot of moisture and oil. It's mostly the fabric that does that. So when you're washing, you're more taking care of the fabric than you are the down. But I've had people who've put 2,500 miles on their quilt and still haven't washed it, and they're still going strong.
Whoa.
And you're talking hundreds and hundreds of nights, against your dirty, oily body. So I always say wash it as little as you need to. The only time I would really recommend washing it is either A, if you're experiencing a really foul smell, or B, if the fabric is just overly saturated with body oils and dirt,
can see the oils
and it begins to affect the loft.
Yeah.
So once loft is now getting affected, then I recommend washing it. But I've got quilts. In fact, I snagged one at HangCon. Somebody had a quilt, one of the first 100 top quilts we ever made, that had the original Underground Quilts logo on it. Never been washed, and it's in the shop as we speak, and it is lofted to the exact degree that it was when it was made. And you're talking a quilt that's over 10 years old now. So, but she's used it, maybe 100 times in that 10 years. So again, for the average person, probably won't need to wash it. If you're giving it heavy usage, and there are instructions on the website that talk about like different usages, like if you're using it more than X amount of nights a year, this is how often we recommend washing it,
and we sell down wash on the website.
Yeah.
Just a little
buy
plug.
that down wash from us. But I would say that the best way to take care of it is keep it in a lofted, aired out state as often as possible. And if you do keep it compressed for an extended period of time, just make sure that when you pull it out, one of the things that I would do is lay it out on the floor and literally smack it around. Because what you're going to do is you're going to introduce air back into that chamber, and it's going to help it loft up quicker and air out faster and dry out faster and restore its loft quicker. Whereas if you pull it out of a compressed state and you just leave it sat there, well, a lot of the down's going to be clumped up, and especially if it had condensation, it could be like stuck together. And so just literally smack it around. The fabric can handle it. Smack it around on your living room floor. In fact, I do that every night before I get into bed when I'm camping. Yeah. I'll lay it on the ground and I'll just smack the whole thing and loft it all back up before I get into bed. Again, that's the best way to maintain the lifespan.
That's good to know. Good to know. Well, I know we've talked about a lot about quilts, top quilts and under quilts, but I will have to say there are two products that were some of my first coveted pieces of gear from UGQ, and they were not quilts. So correct me if I'm wrong. I remember UGQ being the very first tarp on the market that I ever saw an internal pole mod on. And
that I don't know, but yeah, we've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, I like that, like the double internal poles. UGQ for the longest time, I think you guys were the only ones on the market that I've seen doing it. Now it seems like a lot of other vendors are doing it. But I remember seeing that for the first time. I go, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And also another piece of gear. It's not a tarp. It's not a quilt. It's your Scully.
I was going to say, it's got to be those.
Like your Scully, for the longest time, it was you and another company that's no longer around, Black Rock Gear or something like that. You were making the down beanies. And that's such a great piece of gear that if you don't have one, you need to have one. It's one of those things that I didn't know I needed one till I got one. And it's
the viewers can't see.
The viewers can't see it, but I can see it.
The listeners can't see, but
it is a great piece of gear. I think I won a UGQ beanie. But it was like the felt one, and I think it has the original logo on it. I still
that's not the original. That's
not the original. I know what you're talking about.
That's from like 2016 to 2017, one with the feather.
Okay, yeah. That would have been about the time that I won it. But yeah, the Scullies, if you don't own one, you need to get one.
Yeah,
it's part of my sleep system.
I developed those over a weekend when Paul and my mom were out of town, And I was always obsessed, like, what can we make with down and this fabric? Like, we have all this stuff here. What else can we make that we're not doing? And so I had got on and did some research, and at the time, I don't think I even came across BlackRock. I think it was like Outdoor Research, and they had like this like beehive looking thing that you could wear on your head that was filled with down, but terrible. It was horrible looking. And one of the things that we've always been known about is like being stylish, right? We have all the custom colors and prints, etc. And so me and my brother worked on it over the course of one weekend. And by the time they got back, we had a finished product. And the original design had a two-tone, different color band from the top. And then we did a Kickstarter and launched them that way. And before you know it, we were making thousands and thousands of them. But it was one of those things that was literally similar to the Quillo. It was a 1 or 2 day design to a finished product. And it's stood the test of time this entire time. So we like the Scully. You can't hike in them because you'll die. But
no, but it should be part of a system.
It's
sure.
If you're at HangCon, you're walking around, you're seeing a lot of Scullys and you're seeing a lot of Lightheart gear. It's almost like the official uniform.
Yeah, that's true.
So earlier in the episode, we talked about, the hammock community and you guys having really good relationships with other vendors. When you guys go on a trip, what is your favorite piece of non-UGQ gear?
It would have to be in the hammock arena. Well, so my favorite backpack is Waymark gear, which rip Waymark. they unfortunately have dissolved, but that was probably, I've used a lot of different backpacks. That's probably my favorite pack. And then favorite backpacking hammock is definitely still Dream Hammock. And then favorite hammock, car camping hammock would definitely be Majestic Hammock.
Okay, awesome.
My favorite piece is like an RV or
hers is a camper,
a coffee maker, a bathroom. No.
But yeah.
So you said coffee maker. So when you're camping, how are we doing coffee?
Usually a French press. If we don't literally have a plug-in one, we can bring.
Yeah, so they have some backpacking French press options now. When I go backpacking, it's literally instant coffee that I pour in some boiled water, and that's it. But
I really try to not. I try to.
When we took the RV, we had a full coffee maker in there.
In the RV, it depends on our sleep.
You got an espresso maker that pulling a shot.
So originally, when we would go to hammock events, we had our big coffee,
like a one of those, whatever
like the big ones. So we would always provide coffee for all the hammock events and things like that. When we took over the business, I did have them somewhere, and I can't find them because we had 2 big giant coffee urns that we would have.
The thing I realized, piece of gear that's not ours, every piece of gear I'm like, that's UGQ, is a headlamp. I cannot be out there without a headlamp.
Oh yeah.
Getting up to go to the bathroom, all the late night walks. Like, I realized, wow, I never thought I'd care about a headlamp until. I
will honestly say I'm not a gear junkie when it comes to anybody else's stuff.
No, I feel like we're like that about.
I'm kind of like it. So if it's a cottage brand that I know and trust, then I'm 100% buying. Like if it's something that they make that we don't, I'm 100% buying it from them. Like there's a lot of Z-Pack stuff that I like.
Yeah.
There's and me and Matt are good friends. We talk a lot. We're talking about doing some things also. But
you should bring him down to HangCon since he's already in Florida.
Oh.
Yeah, he wouldn't have to go far. That's for sure.
That'd be a quick trip.
I don't know though, because they sell quilts. We kind of want to keep them out of there.
No.
But yeah, so I don't know.
I always need a good bag of some sort. Like every event we go to, I'm always finding a new bag of some sort, fanny pack or wallet, or so. I'm a brand ambassador.
My favorite bag cottage manufacturer. I don't know if you've even heard of him. Wandering Goat.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
I think I have heard of them, but I don't know.
I met him at Michigan.
He's making some of the highest quality, coolest bags, backpacks.
The customization on it is like amazing.
Just the quality alone. So we saw him at the Michigan Hang last year. That was the first time I met him. And I was rifling through all of his stuff, and I'm like, dude, this is some of the best quality I've seen come out of a cottage company when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I
won like a shoulder
I'll
bag.
be having him on the podcast here soon. We've been going back and forth, setting up a date, but that's So like if I'm looking for stuff like that, those are the companies I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm not getting on Amazon or buying any of
No,
that
we're
stuff.
looking for other companies.
But like
that.
you know, stoves and you know things like that. Like
we do always have your
cottage
BioLite.
companies. Cottage companies aren't making stoves. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like so you kind of got to look for the most reputable in that in the backpacking space that everybody you know how it goes. Like you got to do your research. But
I'd say that's something we always have is your little BioLite
my
stove.
favorite gear overall is definitely hammock gear.
That's one of our go-tos. Stop. The BioLite.
Shout out to Adam.
Hello, Adam. I can't wait for him and I to do another podcast at HangCon.
Yeah, that'll be
y'all were a hoot together. So as far as your places that you go, not necessarily trade shows, what are the top 3 places if you could hammock camp or camp anywhere in the world? Where would you go? With or without kids?
Oh, with kids versus without.
That's a question.
With kids, probably the one place that you always say you want to go back to, the Manitou.
Oh yeah, North Manitou Island is one of my
there.
favorite places to
That sounds
camp
like a
in
fun
general.
kids trip.
So that's an island off of Lake Michigan. So if anybody that's familiar with like Sleeping Bear Dunes, et cetera, up on the northwest corner of the Lower Peninsula, there's 2 islands, North and South Manitou Island. So North Manitou Island is a remote island. There's nobody lives on it. There's no businesses. It's a 15,000 acre island that's specifically for camping and backpacking. And then South Manitou is more touristy, where they have like food and lodging and things like that. But
for just you and I want to do like pictured rocks.
Pictured rocks.
And then you pick one.
I mean, Michigan's
There's
got
so
a lot
many
of
places.
gems that almost everybody knows. Pictured Rocks and Isle Royale and
We've not
the
been.
MRT and all that kind of stuff. Those are super touristy destinations.
I still want to do pictured rocks.
I like the more remote locations. So if I could pick anywhere, it would be like Northern Canada with Joe Robinette on a super remote expedition. You can come, but I know you wouldn't want to be eating there to survive.
No, I'm not trying to be like that.
So yeah, I prefer to go out. I would prefer to go out, literally bushcraft, make my own shelter, harvest our own food. Like that's my favorite style of camping. So to answer your question, anywhere that's super remote and you can't hear anything and you can see the entire universe at night.
Yeah, I think over the last 2 years of going to, like you said, some of the more touristy areas, like Acadia and Yellowstone, kind of like some of the most popular national parks. Yeah, they're cool, but they're like 10,000 acre parking lots.
Yeah.
They're it's like, but you also get places, and I'm sure people are tired of hearing me talk about, but Glacier National Park is just, it's so big. You can do a lot of that as well. So Michigan, that whole Michigan central north central United States is definitely on our list of trips that we want to take. We almost did that this past summer, but we chose the East Coast instead. But yeah, hitting some of those national parks there, and because that Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin area are states that we haven't been to yet, so definitely on our list.
Come to the shop.
Well, one of these years, maybe even next year, I want to organize an event on North Manitou Island where basically we get as many people as we can to come do it, because they have only limited number of slots per night that they allow on the island, and that's to keep it as remote as possible. So when we went, there was probably about 500 people on the island, and we only saw people like 2 times while we were out on the entire island, which is crazy. So, but I'd like to do where we had basically put it out there. Anybody that wants to come camp with us or backpack with us and go do a trip on North Manitou Island for 3 or 4 days, because you're stuck there. When you take the ferry there, and the ferry only comes so often, so they drop you off and then you're there until they come and pick you up.
Yeah, if we did that, probably no kids. Don't big me up, but.
So you talked about HangCon being your favorite event that you go. Could we assume that we're going to see you in 2025?
Oh yeah, for sure,
definitely.
Even if we have to take a train to get there.
Now the next question, because I know this was kind of sort of the plan this year, but some things came out. Will we see you in Denmark next year?
If I don't go, I'm pretty sure they're going to come over here and kill me.
Yeah. So that's our plan is for Chad and I to go, not kids.
They were. Well, it wasn't just them that were bummed. There was.
Well, we were bummed.
We were bummed, it just the timing didn't work out.
There was too much
kids and where we were at with the business, and
we couldn't find his passport. There was delays getting mine.
Knowing that it's happening again next year, we have a lot more time to plan for it and be prepared.
And we want to be there and plan to be there.
Yeah, it was a blast. I think you guys would thoroughly have a blast. I can't wait.
A huge portion of our sales right now are coming out of Denmark.
Yeah.
So I know that they want us there bad. And in fact, I told Brittney that if it works out, we may just end up staying permanently.
Oh, no.
It's two reasons. I mean, if you talk to anybody,
the thought crossed my mind numerous times while I was over there.
Anybody in Europe, which is say as a continent, there are so few, if any, quilt cottage companies, manufacturers on that side of the world. And we are one of the most well-known on that side of the world. And so if we packed up and moved shop there, because all of those countries, economically speaking, are so wealthy, we would probably do substantially better than we are here in the States, literally as a business. And so you just never know, because it's easier for people to import from the U.S. or from Denmark to the U.S. than it is the other way around.
Right. Wow. I remember seeing like 3 or 4 people offered to buy my complete setup while I was still over there using it, just because they're like, well, I'll pay you double what it costs, because it'll be still cheaper than paying all the taxes and things. So
when I talked to Lars about it and Christian, I asked him, I said, why do you think we're getting so many orders from Denmark? I'm like, the import cost is absurd. And he was like, they basically like, when we find good products, we don't care what it costs. We're all rich. So we're going to buy what we want. We're going to buy the good gear and get whatever we need to get. And we don't really care what it costs, because we don't have access to this type of gear.
Well, it's not that they don't care. They just put a lot of value on quality, so they're willing to pay.
Yeah.
In American.
Yeah, I would definitely say, just from my experience over there, the options that they have over there are significantly smaller than the options over here.
Right.
So, all right. Well, we're running about an hour and a half, and it's been really great talking with you guys. I kind of want to finish it up. Talk about your podcast, and where can people find you, either on your social media or your website?
They can find us on social media or on the website.
Oh my gosh, UGQOutdoor.com, of course. And we're on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and then the podcast is usually on YouTube.
So the podcast, I'm still figuring out
how to get on.
Yeah, we are too.
We're
new to all this.
Yeah. With the amount of things that we have to manage in a day, we try to keep up as much as we can with podcasts and social media, et cetera. And when I was looking into adding the podcast to other platforms, it's not as easy to do if all of the setting up YouTube as my RSS feed to backtrack and upload to all the other platforms.
To the other platforms.
So I have to extract the audio from all the podcasts that we've done and upload them separately. And once I do that, then I can start uploading to there first, and then sending that to YouTube. But it's just it's a complicated mess, and I don't have time to mess with it. So if you want to check out our podcast, just search UGQ Outdoor on YouTube, and you will find our podcast on YouTube exclusively. And make sure you subscribe.
Awesome. Well, Chad, Brittney, it's a pleasure as always. And if you want to see some awesome quilts, guys, go check out their Instagram. They do some amazing products, as well as tarps, and you can't forget the scullies as well. So, all right. Thanks you guys for coming on, and I hope you guys have enjoyed our episode this week. And until next time, happy hanging, everybody.
As we gently sway out of another Hammock Field episode, we want to thank you, our wonderful listeners, for hanging out with us on the Hammock Hangers Podcast. We hope that you have found relaxation, inspiration, and a renewed sense of connection to nature through our discussions. Remember to keep that hammock spirit alive in your daily life, whether it's by taking a few moments to unwind in your own backyard oasis, or by planning your next hammock adventure in the great outdoors. Embracing the tranquility, embracing the simplicity, and never forget the joy that comes from simply hanging around. Before we part ways, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date with all things hammock related. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for the Hammock Hangers Podcast. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to hang with you again on our next episode. Until then, stay relaxed, stay adventurous, and keep on hanging those hammocks high. From all of us here at the Hammock Hangers Podcast, we wish you peaceful hangs and endless relaxation. Thank you for tuning in. Happy hanging, everyone.